Exploring the impact of zoning reforms on housing affordability. The problem of housing affordability is not limited to specific countries or regions. It is a global problem that affects metropolitan areas, suburbs, and rural towns. Millions of people lack stable shelter because of rising rents and property prices coupled with a lack of affordable housing. These challenges have prompted many policymakers to focus on zoning reforms to reshape the housing ecosystem. For decades, imbalanced and overly restrictive zoning laws have limited the housing supply, folded segregated and inequitable communities, and driven up housing costs. Understood structural inequities have pushed zoning reforms to the center of conversations about achieving affordable, equitable, and sustainable housing. Zoning regulations were originally put in place to manage orderly development and to insulate and protect property values for owners. However, these laws have often produced adverse outcomes. Zoning laws have controlled dwelling densities, limited multifamily residences, and discriminatory zoning practices that facilitated the deepening of the inequities of exclusion. Because of these adverse consequences, the reform of zoning systems has become crucial for decision-makers, policymakers, and communities to address the challenges of housing affordability. Over the past few years, the urgency of the housing problem, combined with grassroots activism and academic scholarship, has propelled the demand for reform. The historical role of zoning in shaping housing affordability. The zoning laws have been prominent to define the availability, type, and affordability of housing within a century of existence. Zoning was initially adopted in the early 20th century with the promise of creating order in an ever-expanding urban environment by creating divisions between industrial and residential locations and making sure that the development in the neighborhood was planned. Nonetheless, these legislations did not remain within the confines of simple planning objectives and started impacting social and economic developments in dramatic manners. One of the most lasting and powerful forms of zoning, single-family zoning, was prevalent in the mid-20th century. Municipalities essentially prevented the development of multifamily housing, including duplexes, triplexes, or apartment complexes, by zoning large parcels of urban and suburban land to single-family homes. Whereas this produced homogeneous neighborhoods that were larger in lot size and with a low density, it also drastically decreased the availability of affordable housing opportunities, and especially in high-demand neighborhoods. How zoning reforms expand housing supply. The zoning reform and the issue of affordability are intertwined on the concept of supply and demand. Housing crises are also caused by zoning laws that restrict density and development of diversified housing. When such rules are modified, more possibilities of development, creation of additional units, and the strains on prices become less. The law abolishing or reducing the control of single-family housing areas has the greatest direct impact on supply. Cities where zoning of single-family houses is extended to include duplicates, triplicates, and small apartments make it possible to increase by a wide margin the number of households that can be accommodated within a particular neighborhood. By this means, so-called gentle densification increases the total housing stock. Equity and inclusion through zoning reforms. In addition to augmenting supply, zoning reforms carry far-reaching consequences of equity and inclusion. The socioeconomic and racial segregation has long been perpetuated by restrictive zoning, which has made it challenging to afford neighborhoods with good schools, secure neighborhoods, and economic opportunities to the low and moderate-income households. Zoning reforms open up opportunities to more inclusive communities whereby opportunity is not defined by income or race. Cities that allow multifamily housing and affordable housing development in high-resource neighborhoods increase the options of previously marginalized households. This can interrupt poverty cycles whereby families can transfer to neighborhoods that have higher chances of upward mobility. Studies have also indicated that children raised in such societies have more chances of making it in school, having higher earnings at adulthood, and have improved health conditions. Economic and social benefits of zoning reform. Embracing changes in zoning regulations holds numerous advantages for housing affordability. These changes benefit local economies, social conditions, and even the ecosystem. When communities envision alternative land use, the eco-social conditions become more resilient and dynamic, and the improved social conditions in the community weaken the need for social protective services. Socially protective services that are overly present in community conditions include amenities such as low-rent housing. Such amenities can add pressure and even stifle entrepreneurial efforts. From a socioeconomic aspect, liberalizing a community's zoning regulations protects a region's workforce and offers socioeconomic stability to employers. In expensive metropolitan areas, employers and workers experience the high commuting costs of spatial inequity. Providing more zoning options means more and less costly housing that can situate closer to the jobs, lower commuting costs, and enhance employee productivity. Such work-related economic efficiencies can attract additional firms, expanding business-related socioeconomic activities in that region. Challenges and opposition to zoning reform. Nevertheless, zoning reform has a lot of obstacles and resistance despite its potential. These challenges underscore the difficulties in prioritizing local interests with greater societal objectives, and they help understand why the introduction of reforms is usually met with opposition despite the evident housing crisis. Community opposition is one of the most consistent issues, and it is also commonly known as the not-in-my-backyard NIMBY sentiment. The hide-and-see development in the neighborhood can be opposed by residents because of their fears of more traffic, congestion in schools, and the deteriorating property prices. Although most of those issues are groundless, they suggest the fears of the societies that were used to the status quo. Local governments are also important as they have a great power to dictate land. In most instances, elected officials will not be keen on forcing through reforms that could be unpopular among the constituents, despite the fact that they can be in the overall interest of the population. This creates a paralysis or kill-off bold reforms. The future of zoning reform and housing affordability. There is hope and darkness in the outlook of the future of zoning reform. With housing affordability to dominate the political and social discourse, zoning will still be a research and development center, as well as a place of experimentation and policy transformation. The course of reform will be based on the ability of governments, communities, and stakeholders to coordinate towards common objectives. The development of bipartisan awareness of the necessity of reform is one of the promising trends. Throughout the political spectrum, greater acceptance is being expressed that restrictive zoning has been a cause of the housing crisis and that something drastic needs to be done. States such as Oregon, California, and Minnesota have already passed laws to abolish single-family zoning or promote higher density, which can be emulated by other states. There is also potential of technological and design innovations. The zoning reforms can be complemented with the help of advances in modular construction, sustainable materials, and digital planning tools to make the development of housing more efficient and cost-effective. These inventions are able to overcome some of these barriers that are created by the high construction cost and lack of land. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share.